Influenza is an infectious disease of the respiratory tract caused by influenza viruses. The three main types of influenza virus that are infectious within humans include type A, type B, and type C. However, there are numerous strains and subtypes. Influenza is a globally scaled virus that is the cause of major morbidity and mortality throughout history due to its sheer unpredictability and ability to mutate. Additionally, the virus is highly successful in transmission and as a killer as it is so easily spread from person to person via droplets. It is estimated by the World Health Organization that on average 1 billion people are infected and over 500,000 people die from influenza each year. Though influenza is a vaccine-preventable disease, the vaccination is constantly being updated to match the mutations being made by the virus, thus meaning that a new shot is needed every year to continue potential immunity. Influenza is transmitted through aerosols. When an individual speaks, sneezes, sings, breathes, or coughs, droplets are suspended into the air. Inhalation of these droplets places the virus in the upper respiratory tract where an individual will potentially become infected. Another form of transmission is when an infected individual contaminates their hand through coughing, sneezing, or touching their nose or conjunctiva. When this infected person touches an object, the virus will survive on the surface. If a healthy individual touches that same surface and then places their hand on their nose or their mouth, the virus then can enter the respiratory tract, infecting the originally uninfected individual. This is why it is very important to consider proper hygiene by covering your nose and mouth when coughing or sneezing, by washing your hands frequently with soap and water, and by using tissues. It is also important to note that you should dispose of these tissues or any surfaces where viruses can remain active. Symptoms of the influenza illness typically appear 1 to 3 days after becoming infected. These symptoms include sore throat, fever, headache, dry cough, tiredness, muscle and joint pain. It is recommended that one seeks immediate medical attention if the sickness quickly worsens or if any of the following signs arise: chest pains, confusion, continuous vomiting, or shortness of breath. Influenza impacts all ages, however, there are specific individuals in which it burdens more significantly. Elderly individuals fall under this category of members at a higher risk and are eligible for free influenza vaccination. This leads to my inquiry. Is implementing mandatory influenza vaccination programs in residential aged care facilities the best method of prevention against influenza for the world's aging population? As an individual ages, the innate and adaptive immune responses gradually deteriorate, resulting in reduced capabilities when responding to infection and immunization. As a result, the body takes longer to detect when there is an infection, and once detected, the immune system takes longer to deal with it, losing the race against the pathogen. This results in getting sick more often and infections being more severe. There are many defects in the immune response to influenza in the elderly, which justify why they are at a higher risk of infection and death. The best method of protection against the influenza virus is to receive annual vaccination. This is highly recommended by the World Health Organization. Though there are thousands of strains of influenza, the vaccine provides protection against the 3 to 4 strains predicted by the World Health Organization to be circulating that year. If infected with influenza, your doctor may prescribe you with flu antiviral drugs. These have the ability to make the illness milder, prevent flu complications, and shorten sickness time. Antiviral drugs help to fight the flu by binding to an enzyme in the virus so that infectious parts of the viruses cannot be released. By doing this, antivirals stop the flu virus from multiplying and spreading throughout the body. Within Australia, there are currently 3 antiviral medicines used for both treatment and prevention of influenza, including Tamiflu, Relenza, and Sumetril. The 2017 influenza season saw severe outbreaks in the elderly, especially within residential aged care facilities. Members aged 65 and older accounted for more than 90% of all notified deaths related to the flu. Surveillance reports show that influenza outbreaks within institutions across New South Wales were over 4 times greater than the past 5-year average. As a result of these alarming statistics, the Australian government has been working towards methods to improve protection from seasonal influenza amongst the older age groups. Thus came the decision for mandatory influenza vaccination programs within residential aged care facilities. The guidelines developed by CDNA state that residential aged care facilities should have an influenza vaccine policy that applies to both staffs, and residents. It is also urged that this policy is implemented and updated each year. CDNA's target is 95% vaccination coverage among residents and staff before the flu season begins. A survey discovered that though a majority of residential aged care facilities have an infection control policy and vaccination program in place for residents and staff, only 3.5% of these facilities met the 95% vaccination coverage target of their staff. In April 2018, mandatory annual influenza vaccination programs for residential aged care staff and volunteers was approved. Vaccinating all staff is crucial to reducing influenza illness within healthcare settings as it reduces rates of influenza in staff whilst also prevents the spread from staff to residents. A study taken of 20 long-term aged care facilities were randomly either offered or not offered the influenza vaccination. Patient deaths were recorded over the 6 months of 1996 to 97 flu season. A random sample of 50% of patients was selected to be tested for influenza every 2 weeks. The studies found that influenza vaccination uptake within aged care workers was 50.9% in facilities where vaccine was regularly offered, compared to 4.9% in facilities where it was not. The rate of mortality in residents was 13.6% in vaccine facilities, compared to 22.4% in no vaccine facilities. These results conclude that vaccination of aged care workers was associated with a substantial decrease in mortality among patients. It is also critical to vaccinate all residents within the facility, as though vaccine efficacy is lower in elderly than in adults, it still has benefit. A study proves older adults that receive influenza vaccine are at lower risk of influenza infection compared with placebo by 6% to 2.4% and have a reduced risk of influenza-like illness by 6% to 3.5%. Taking action to ensure adequate health with age is highly important, as it has been well established that the global population is aging. In 2017, the population of members aged 60 years and older numbered over 960 million. This was more than double the amount in 1980. By 2050, it is estimated that individuals aged over 60 will again double, reaching 2.1 billion. In Australia alone, by 2097, members aged over 65 are estimated to make up 25% of the Australian population. Influenza vaccines have been developed specifically for members aged 65 and over. Fluzone High Dose is one of these vaccines. It is a trivalent inactivated vaccine that consists of 4 times the antigen of standard dose influenza vaccines. The vaccine aims to provide a better immune response and overall protection against influenza in older adults, proving to be 24.2% more effective. Fluad is a standard dose trivalent inactivated influenza vaccine containing the adjuvant MF59. This has shown to be significantly improved in providing protection in elderly members, as the vaccine is able to increase both the humoral and cellular immune responses to influenza. WHO and other health organization research programs are working towards developing a new influenza vaccine called a universal flu vaccine. The universal vaccine will provide long-lasting protection against multiple subtypes of influenza. An individual would receive this vaccine early on and would not have to update their seasonal flu vaccination every year. The vaccine is an attempt to overcome the obstacles of the ever-changing nature of influenza. Scientists at the Doherty Institute of Monash University claim that they have discovered the specific immune cells that are capable of fighting off all forms of the flu virus. Their research identifies parts of the virus that have not changed for over a decade, even when the virus mutates. It has also been discovered that these parts of the virus can be attacked by killer T cells. These findings contribute greatly to the development of a universal flu vaccine and may lead to the future success of prevention against all strains of influenza virus across all ages. We are yet to see the effects of mandating annual vaccinations within these facilities, but if the 95% coverage goal is reached, there should see a decrease in death rates due to influenza. The development of Fluzone High-Dose vaccine and the Fluad vaccine was a significant step in improving the immune response and overall protection within aging population, and hopefully future improvements will follow. Ultimately, mandating influenza vaccination programs in residential aged care facilities is the best current method of prevention for the world's aging population. However, the potential and future success of the universal vaccine is ideal.